He told them he'd show 'em magic. He'd pull out a deck of cards, shuffle them with a flourish, and ask them to pick one. His hands moved with practiced ease, each motion designed to captivate and distract. The kids watched, wide-eyed, as he performed sleight-of-hand tricks, making cards disappear and reappear as if by magic. He told them he'd do tricks. He'd pull colourful handkerchiefs from his sleeves, seemingly endless, and tie them into funny shapes. He'd make balloon animals, twisting and turning the balloons into dogs, swords and hats. The children laughed and clapped, their faces lit up with joy and wonder. He promised them laughs, a good time, something to smile about. He'd juggle balls and clubs, his painted face grinning all the while. He'd tell jokes, some corny, some genuinely funny, and the kids would giggle and cheer. To them, he was just a funny clown, a source of entertainment and joy. What they got was a nightmare. The laughter turned to screams, the joy to terror. The friendly clown mask slipped, revealing the monster beneath. The children who had once looked at him with admiration now saw the darkness in his eyes, the malevolence in his smile. John Wayne Gacy, the man behind the painted grin of Pogo the Clown, wasn't bringing joy. He was bringing death. His charm and charisma were tools of deception, luring his victims into a false sense of security. They never saw the danger until it was too late. Young lads, barely men, tricked into the home of a monster. They thought they were going to a party, a job interview, or just to hang out. They had no idea they were walking into a trap, set by a man who wore a mask of normalcy but hid a heart of darkness. Their trust, their innocence, turned against them. Gacy was a master manipulator, using his charm to gain their confidence. He'd shake their hands, look them in the eye, and make them feel safe. But behind that friendly facade was a predator waiting to pounce. The air in Gacy's house was thick and heavy, a stink of rot and something much, much worse. The walls seemed to close in, the darkness pressing down on anyone who entered. It was a place of secrets, of horrors hidden just beneath the surface. The smell of death clung to him, like a perfume that told everyone what he really was. It was a scent that lingered, a constant reminder of the atrocities committed within those walls. Those who got too close could sense it, even if they couldn't quite place it. He'd tie his victims up, their cries for help, lost in the darkness. The ropes cut into their skin, their struggles only making the bindings tighter. They were trapped, helpless, with no one to hear their desperate pleas. Each choked sob, each desperate plea was music to his ears. He revelled in their fear, their pain. It was a twisted symphony, a dark melody that played out in the shadows of his home, and for Gacy it was the sweetest sound of all. In the daytime, Gacy was one of the lads, a builder doing all right, working hard on construction sites, always ready with a joke or a helping hand. He was the kind of guy who'd lend you his tools without a second thought, the kind of guy who'd stay late to help finish a project, a friendly face at the shops, always stopping to chat with the shopkeepers, asking about their day, making everyone feel seen and appreciated. He knew everyone's name and they knew his. He was a regular, someone you could count on to brighten your day with a kind word or a friendly smile. A good bloke in his part of Chicago, always waving to neighbours, stopping to chat about the weather or the latest local news. He was the kind of neighbour who'd help you carry your groceries or lend a hand with a DIY project. Everyone knew him and everyone liked him. Just a regular guy, they said. Someone who'd show up at community events, laughing and joking with friends, always in the thick of things. He was the life of the party, the guy who'd make sure everyone was having a good time. He was dependable, reliable, the kind of person you'd want in your corner. Always happy to help, always got a smile. Someone you could trust. He'd help you fix your car, mow your lawn, or babysit your kids. He was the kind of person who'd go out of his way to make your life a little easier, a little better. His smile was infectious, his kindness genuine, someone you could have over to your house. He'd come over for dinner, bring a bottle of wine, and charm everyone at the table. He was a great guest, always polite, always engaging. He'd listen to your stories, share a few of his own, and make you feel like you were the most important person in the room. He was into local politics. He did charity work. He was always looking for ways to give back, to make his community a better place. He'd organize fundraisers, volunteer at local shelters, and speak at council meetings. He was a pillar of the community, someone who cared deeply about the people around him. He even put on that Pogo the Clown get-up, making kids smile at parties. He'd twist balloons into animals, perform silly tricks, and make everyone laugh. He was a natural entertainer, someone who loved to see people happy. The kids adored him, and the parents appreciated his efforts to bring joy to their little ones. It's enough to make you sick, knowing the man they cheered for, the man they trusted, had such darkness inside him, deep and endless like the ocean. Behind the smiles and the laughter, there was a sinister side, a side that no one saw until it was too late. The friendly neighbor, the helpful builder, the beloved clown, all masks hiding a terrifying truth. Behind the normal face he put on, Gacy's house was a graveyard. The crawl space under the floorboards, that was his tomb. It was down there in the cold dirt that he hid what he'd done. 26 bodies, tossed away like rubbish, their lives taken to feed the hunger in him. Their faces, frozen in screams, stared up at the wooden beams of his house. Their voices, silenced forever, echoed in the silence of his soul. He'd sit in the dark, surrounded by the dead, their presence a twisted kind of comfort to his mind. How'd he do it? How'd he keep up this normal act for so long? The answer's in how his mind worked. He built walls inside himself, separating the monster from the man. He lived a double life like Jekyll and Hyde. One side charming, the life of the party, the other a hunter, a cruel beast, a bottomless pit of darkness. He was a master at messing with people, at lying, at seeing what they wanted and giving it to them. But even the best lies fall apart. Whispers started going around. Boys, young men vanishing without a trace. Their families, their friends, left with nothing but questions, their calls for justice left unanswered. Some folks had their suspicions, some even dared to point the finger, but Gacy was clever. He'd twist things around, he'd deny everything, he'd charm his way out of trouble. He was, after all, a respected member of the community. Who'd believe such awful things about him? Section 6, Unveiling the Charnel House. But the truth always comes out, like a bad smell you can't hide. The stench of death, no matter how well you try to cover it up, always finds a way out. It was the disappearance of Robert Peast, a 15-year-old lad last seen with Gacy, that finally brought the whole thing crashing down. The police, with a warrant in hand, went to his house, and there, under the floorboards in the cold earth, they found their answer. The nightmare was real. The monster was unmasked. Section 7, Justice at Long Last. The trial of John Wayne Gacy was on every telly. It was a spectacle that gripped the nation, a macabre theatre of justice that no one could turn away from. Families gathered around their television sets, eyes glued to the screen as the gruesome details of Gacy's crimes were laid bare for all to see. The world watched in horror as they talked about what he'd done. 33 victims, 33 lives snuffed out. Each name, each face, a haunting reminder of the evil that had lurked in their midst. The media coverage was relentless, with every newscast delving deeper into the darkness of Gacy's actions. The evidence was clear as day. There were photographs, personal belongings, and the chilling confessions that Gacy himself had given. The prosecution laid out a case so compelling, so irrefutable, that there was no room for doubt. The courtroom was filled with a palpable tension as each piece of evidence was presented. The jury, their faces pale and sickened, all said the same thing: guilty. They had listened to the testimonies, seen the evidence, and felt the weight of the lives lost. Their verdict was unanimous, a collective voice of justice for the victims and their families. The room was silent as the foreman read the verdict, a silence that spoke volumes. In 1980, John Wayne Gacy was sentenced to death. The judge's gavel came down with a finality that echoed through the courtroom. It was a moment of closure for many, a moment that signified the end of Gacy's reign of terror. But for others, it was just the beginning of a long wait for justice to be truly served. They executed him on May 10th, 1994. 14 years after his conviction, the state carried out the sentence. The execution chamber was a stark, sterile room, a place where the final act of justice would be performed. Gacy, now a shadow of the man he once was, faced his end with the same cold detachment that had defined his life. As the poison went into his veins, did he think about what he'd done? Did he feel sorry? The questions lingered in the air unanswered. The witnesses watched in silence, their faces a mix of relief and sorrow. It was a moment that would be etched in their memories forever. Or was there nothing but the cold emptiness of a soul that could never be saved? The prison cell, now empty, stood as a stark reminder of the man who had once occupied it. The dark, eerie corridors of the prison echoed with the silence of a life extinguished. In the end, justice had been served, but the scars left behind would never fully heal. Section 8. A Legacy of Terror. John Wayne Gacy is gone, his killing spree finally over. But the marks he left on his victims, on their families, on all of us, they haven't gone away. His name's forever in the history books, a reminder of the darkness that can be hiding under the surface, even in people who seem perfectly normal. The case of John Wayne Gacy made us face the horrible truth that monsters aren't always hiding in the shadows. Sometimes they're right there in front of us, disguised as our neighbours, our mates, even the clowns who entertain our kids. Section 9. Unanswered Questions. Even though he's dead, John Wayne Gacy still haunts us. There are still questions with no answers, victims with no names, whispers of something bigger going on. We might never know the true depths of his evil. And so, the story of John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, continues to fascinate and horrify. He's a ghost that refuses to rest, a chilling reminder that the line between good and evil can be blurry and sometimes impossible to see.